Hi everyone, I am recording yet another video on the humble pinch pot. So you've already learned how to take some clay and pinch it into a pinch pot. And now I'm going to teach you guys how to address the lip and the feet. So remember, your requirements are to do a couple different things to each one of your little pinch pots. So one of the requirements is that every single pinch pot that you make needs to have some kind of foot somewhere where it's going to rest. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to put a foot on. One of the other requirements is to do something interesting with one of your pinch pot's lips. So here I'm going to put a foot on this one, I'm going to do something interesting with the lip, and then I might add a texture so that you can see 3 requirements in one pot. Okay, so here we go. So here I have my 2 pinch pots I made. And I made this earlier today, so it has a little bit of give, but it's definitely drying out. So I would say this is like cheese hard, cheddar cheese hard, and that one's getting a little bit drier. So I was going to make a scalloped one, but I think I need to make something that has a little bit different of a lip. But let me show you what I did to get this scalloped kind of look first. You can always draw any pattern you want where you're going to cut it out by using your needle tool. And I'm just drawing the line first. So I want to make sure I draw it in, and then if I don't like something, I can easily erase it. And since I've already done a scalloped edge, I'm going to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to actually just erase that whole thing so that you can see a little bit of a different example than that scalloped. So I'm thinking about like in old craftsman style homes, they have like molding between the ceiling and the wall, and sometimes the molding is highly carved. This is a dental style molding where I'm just going to cut out little teeth, so to speak. And I'm using my needle tool to draw it in first, because I don't want to commit to cutting until a little bit later. I'm kind of supporting where I'm cutting with my hand on the inside. That way I don't like bust the lip through. And I'm going to fast forward so I can cut that out really, really fast for you. So there we go. It kind of looks like a little bit of a castle keep. This might be cool for like a Halloween styled little pinch pot. But you can see the little jagged edges. I need to smooth all that out. So I'm going to go back through. I'm going to wet my fingers. I'm going to go in and smooth, smooth, smooth. You want to spend a little bit of time doing that. Make sure that the edges are not super sharp. And think about the transition of the lip through the body of the vessel all the way down towards the foot. So I'm going to flip this over, and now I'm going to put a foot onto the bottom. I'm just going to do a classic style foot where I take a nugget of clay and I'm going to push it through my hands to roll it into a coil. So try to use even pressure from your palm, and if you get a flat part, you can just kind of squish it down on that flat part to make it more round as you go. And what you can see is you don't want it to be too thick. You can see that this is about the same thickness as the rim of the lip. You want those 2 shapes or sizes to relate to one another. And then I'm just going to curve it into a circle. Once I have my circle, I can put it onto the bottom of my pinch pot and look at the profile. If you look at the profile, you can kind of see if it looks about right. I think this foot looks a little large, so I'm actually going to cut it down because I feel like it comes out too far. I'm going to make it slightly smaller. So resize before you commit to a foot. The first foot you do doesn't have to be the one. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to cut my needle tool through both edges of that half circle, or that circle, and then slip and score the edges together. Always remember to slip and score. Slipping and scoring is you're kind of scraping up the clay, and then you add that slip that you made probably last class or last session that you had. I asked you guys to make a little bit of slip. Use that slip to really push that clay together, and then just finesse it, make it look really nice. And then to pop the foot onto the bottom, I'm going to set it on, and I'm going to use my needle tool to trace the interior circle and the exterior circle of the foot. And then I'm just going to slip and score. Remember, slipping and scoring is so important. This is what's going to determine whether or not the foot actually pops off of your pinch pot during the firing. What happens a lot of times is people don't spend a lot of time slipping and scoring, and you can see I'm scraping over and over and over again. If you don't spend enough time, the clay has a memory, and as it dries or as it's fired in the kiln, that foot ring and the pot itself will remember that it wasn't always one piece of clay, and they will shrink separately. They will shrink away from each other. You don't want that to happen. You want to set it down. You want to give it a little shimmy. That's what that shimmy look was for. And then this edge, you're going to smooth that into the edge. And what I find is I have to use my fingernail for this part. I find like the pad of my finger doesn't quite push the clay well enough, so I'm going to use my fingernail, pushing it all the way around, making sure I do the whole pot. And there's my dog in the background popping up. What a dork. Anyways, and then I'm going to take a wooden knife, and I'm just going to kind of work those two clay bodies together. And you can see the foot is a little bit smaller. I've kind of worked on the outside, cutting it down a little bit to make it a little bit nicer. And then on the inside, if you don't smooth out the inside and work the inside ring into the pot, it will crack as well. So you need to then go around the inside, smoothing it out from the foot ring into the body of the pot. And then just spend some time smoothing out the edge of that foot. The edges of your foot should not be angular. You want them to be fairly rounded on the edges, and that really helps in the longevity of your pot. So you can see I want it rounded right there. If you make it too perfectly square, that's my cat. If you make it too perfectly square, it tends to chip every time you pick up the pot and put it down. That like hard edge tends to want to chip. So I'm going to flip that back over, and that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to put that one aside, pick up this other one, the scalloped edge, and you can see the foot totally looks different. I didn't do a round foot. I wanted the scallop edge to have a relationship with this foot, so I made it into kind of a scalloped shape. So the edge of the foot and the edge of the lip relate to one another. And just make sure that those really smooth. And then to get it to land flat, I just tap, 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 tap the bottom flat, tap, tap, and then you can add your texture. So adding texture is using really any tool. I'm going to start with a pencil. Pencils are great for ceramics. If you got a toolkit with a stylus would be fine as well. And a stylus is basically, it looks like a needle tool, but the tip of the needle tool is kind of like a small little round ball, and that compresses the clay. And you can see as I'm pulling this pencil through the surface, of course the lead is not going to show up after the firing. That will completely disappear, but it's good to kind of use that as a visual marker. But I'm kind of pushing a line through the clay, so it's slightly raised up. And if I mess up, I can always erase. You can add a little water or compress it down if you mess up. And I want to delineate the lip from the body. This gives me a place to kind of a line to color to. So I can put underglaze on this piece later on, and I can put like red down here or blue or green or any of the underglaze colors. And then above the line, I can do a completely different color. And that line makes a great border between the two colors. And I could even put a line on the inside if I wanted to. Maybe I only want color on the lip. And now I'm going to take this needle tool. You should have a needle tool in your toolkit. This is a metal needle tool, so the bottom has a nice like rolled edge. The wooden needle tools tend to be a little bit more sharp, so just be aware. But I'm going to support the inside of the pinch pot, and then I'm going to just apply some pressure. Because this pinch pot has been sitting and setting up, it is cheese hard, probably on the harder cheese hard side, so cheddar hard, and I really need to apply some pressure. So I'm working really fast now. And make sure that your hand on the inside stays with the tool as you're working. So you can see this gives me a really nice little polka dot texture all the way around, and I could spend, you know, a ton of time perfecting this, but I'm going to use a different tool for another kind of texture. I'm going to use this wooden knife, and I'm just going to grab a piece of clay to give you an idea of what you can do with this tool. So if you just press the edge of the knife into the clay, and then just do kind of a repeat pattern where you do lines of that edge pressed in, line after line, you get a really nice texture. And this is a fairly deep texture, so this will really show up in the final product. Use any of your tools that way. It's totally fine. So I'm going to do a couple textures on this guy. I don't even like this guy. He's kind of wonky. I'm not a big fan of the dental molding I did on the top. So I'm going to use my double-sided loop tool, and I'm going to press the edge of that double-sided loop tool, and this gives me a fish scale look. And if you just, again, do line and another row and another row and another row of this, that'll give you a texture as opposed to a drawing. You want to stay away from just drawing on the surface. You really do want to create a texture. You can also use a fork. A fork is a great tool for texture. And if you go over your lines over and over and over again with either a metal, even a plastic fork will do great. I hope I said fork earlier. I thought I said knife. Anyways, fork. If you go over and over and over it with a fork, it gives you a nice wood texture. And if I use my brown underglaze on this surface, it will really look like wood. It'll give a very nice feel to the piece. And then I'm just going to kind of smooth down the edge because I want a spot for that to kind of end that pattern. Okay, so that was a couple examples of patterning that you can use your tools to create on your surface. I'm going to go ahead and try to finish up this piece, but I'll finish that up off camera. You need to put your name on every single piece that you make in this class. There's instructions on your assignments, and I've showed you this before with your emblem assignment, but you need to use a pencil or a stylus. Don't use a needle tool for this. And you want to carve your first initial, your last initial, and the last 2 digits of your Delta ID. This way, I can actually find your pieces, and you can find your pieces. And of course, you're going to be photographing your work as you work on it. So remember, you're taking in-progress photos. Every day you should take at least 3-4 photos. So here's my name, SC, and then the number for my Delta ID numbers, which I don't have one, so la-ti-da. And now you can see I'm going to finish this piece. I think it's going to look like, you know, a nice kind of hammered metal look to it. Okay, so when you're done, you can decide what you want to do. Are you absolutely completely done? Do you need to put it into the damp box? Or can you leave it out to dry completely so that you can bring it into the studio? You won't be bringing these in until a couple more weeks, so you have a little bit of time. All right, guys.